Hello and welcome back to our podcast. Well, feels like it's been a long time. 2 of 16 with James here, INTP, and Derek here,
intj.
INTJ. And the topic we came to today is to finish up our series on the functions and talk about the inferior functions. And I can share a lot of, in the time that we've done, we did one previous one actually, but in the time since that, we've made quite a few realizations, I think.
Yeah,
So-
and that original episode, which was before we decided to go through each function step by step. And just a reminder, the inferior function is the fourth function. So you have your hero function, you have your parent function, child function, and then the inferior function.
Mhm.
The episode that you're referring to, we talked about our inferior functions, but there was a specific topic though. Like I don't remember what it was exactly, but we were talking about, I think, just how you were working on FE. Because I remember thinking at that time, feels like it was ages ago. It was like barely 2 months ago.
Yeah.
I feel like I was in my infancy stage of even like, I mean, I understand what SE is. It's just talking about it was a different story, and there's a deeper understanding of how it how I was gonna say manifests itself.
Or were you thinking like how they all interact?
Yeah, just all types of like those things. Like we've gone much deeper with this stuff. So this is a revisitation, but it's really not.
Mhm.
Yeah, and we're going to be talking about the other functions. I don't think we did that previously.
Yeah. The topic I remember is, yes, I made the realization, I'm probably using my inferior function too much, and that was the total topic. And we talked about my inferior FE and your inferior SE, and we can go back to that. We can talk about that. If I remember, like any other realizations we made, we can talk about that here. But the general, I see the general topic of what we're going to talk about today is just go through all the functions and how they look as inferior functions.
Yeah, and we're going to follow the same structure that we did that we have been following. This is logical. Yeah,
Okay.
I mean the episode was called. It was actually our first uploaded episode. It
Okay.
was FE, SE, and INTP, INTJ, healthy inferior functions. So it
Uh-huh.
was us talking about how they manifest themselves in our lives, and then we talked about how we can use them in a healthy manner. Because I guess I didn't like, at that point. I was quite confident in myself, but you were not so much. You were telling me how you've changed over time, and we'll probably touch base this when we get to FE, and how you've learned to sort of better cope with. I don't think cope's the right word, but
Mhm.
maybe reduce the awkwardness of it. And yeah, now that I've sat and thought about it myself, extroverted sensing is the fourth function or the inferior function for myself. I see what we mean when we say that it's awkward. For me, it's more just I don't have that much control over it.
Uh-huh.
Whereas an
Yeah,
SE
yeah, yeah.
Dom has like they know what's up. They know what they're doing.
Mhm.
And for me, it's that like shock I get when I hear a loud noise. That's the awkwardness. So I get it now.
Mhm,
And
mhm.
thinking about what other people how people view me,
Mm.
the lack of confidence there is apparent now. I
Interesting.
think because now that I'm older, though, that's the thing. It's like what I mean is I did some reflection on my younger self, or at least as much as I can remember, and I was certainly more aware of or rather, I was very concerned about how I looked in front of people, and I don't mean in the sense of trying to show off. The exact opposite. Trying not to exist. So doing my best to not be seen. That's also SE.
Uh-huh.
Just the fact that you're aware of
Ah.
people seeing you is extroverted sensing.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, yeah.
So that's what that was. Because
Yes.
I didn't want to be known for anything. Like I was extremely smart, so I was constantly being called on by teachers or constantly having to go to meetings or all this weird stuff that kind of singled me out with a handful of other students. I'm talking like I'm going back really far. I'm talking about in school, and I didn't like it.
Yeah.
I almost thought, oh, should I purposely sabotage my exams just so that I don't stick out? That's how inferior that was. the feeling of like extroverted sensing.
Yes, and I could hear like the sensation of being on the spot.
Mhm.
That sounds very SE. In the moment, they're all. It's like this is your moment.
Yeah, and
yeah.
it's because they're choosing the moment. Like if it's me, if it's something I want to present, like if I'm giving a presentation about something that I've accomplished, then I want the spotlight. I mean, I'm not thinking of it that way. I'm just like, hey, I've got something to tell you. I don't feel anything. I don't feel people watching me. I know that words are coming out of my mouth. That's the extent of it. So it's different when someone else is putting the spotlight on me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Anyway, with that said,
I've seen just a repeating pattern across everything that we learn in MBTI that, or actually in many systems I learned, is there is the path that people go when they're in survival mode, and then there is the path that people go when you go towards awareness and authenticity. So that's something I've noticed, and you can see that this is something that you'll see how people. It's my observation that people actually become aware of their inferior function very early in their life, because especially if you are someone that where your hero function is not really allowed, it's not really like recognized or encouraged. You may find very early on that you almost have to use your inferior function in order to survive. And so I think part of maturation, my current theory is discovering that about your inferior function, and like how it's almost like scarified. It's almost like you use it as like a shield, and over time you break that barrier down, and you relax it.
yeah, I'm just thinking of when I was a child. There's two types of situations I found myself in, messing around with the neighborhood children. Um, there are moments where SE for me is very important. So that's where I had to get used to using it. So it was awkward. You know, you play sports together with your friends or your neighbors, or you play some kind of game. When I mean like an outdoor game. But then there are also cases where you're doing something imaginary, or you know what I mean, like role playing or playing a video game or something like that. And that's where I guess introverted intuition and, well, I mean, I have extroverted thinking as well, came into play too. So I feel like I got very familiar with my entire, like all of my cognitive functions quite early on. And I don't think I was stifled. I don't think I feel like I was stifled. I feel like it was when I hit puberty that I started to stifle myself, like we all do. Well, I mean, we might all do. Because again, like every evening you retreat to home, or there are days when you just don't go out. And so I spent all of that time immersed in NI. And SE doesn't matter. I mean, except for, again, save loud sounds, for example, or some smell or something. So I'm not sure what that has done for me in particular. And as an INTJ, I had trouble. I still struggled with getting along with people, even at a younger age, because I did not. It's not a matter of not knowing how to express myself. I expressed myself confidently, but it hurt people's feelings, it seems. And I learned very early on in life that people are quite delicate. And I thought, obviously, a stereotype, and I'm talking like a child. I'm not talking like 6, 7, 8 years old. I thought, you're supposed to be a boy. Like, aren't you? Why are you acting like a baby? I didn't say like, why are you acting like a girl? I said, why are you acting like a baby? You know, or that like in my mind. I'm not saying that to them, but there were kids like that would cry constantly, and I didn't understand it. Like nothing happened, you know. And that to me, that shows, and this is off topic, shows the embodiment of my trickster, my seventh function, the extroverted feeling.
That's
so even at a young age, like had I known what MBTI was, I might have recognized it, but I'm now looking back and seeing where that manifests itself as well. So that's quite fascinating.
Yeah. I mean, as with inferior FE, I've had a number of conversations growing up where someone shared with me like how I hurt their feelings. And as I was in, like, we were in group mode, we were like working on a project. He said that, and I was like, I don't understand how that relates to what we're doing at all. And so that's a yet another as a person that has, like, you know, TI as my hero function, that was a distant thing to access for me as well there.
Mhm.
So
Interesting.
yes, so let us go into the functions and talk about how they look. And I want to just float that idea of how people in survival mode, they tend to overuse this as a way to protect themselves. And when that comes up in what we talk about, we can talk about it. We'll start with FI. And this is an interesting one because it's not one that I've thought about or experience or explored too much.
Mhm.
Inferior FI. The people with inferior FI are the extroverted thinkers. ENTJ, ESTJ. They have introverted feeling as an inferior function, which means, okay, so we look at the big picture. They favor extroverted thinking, and in order to favor that, they suppress introverted feeling, which is your sense of self, your sense of self-worth, like inherent self-worth, what you like, what you dislike. Like someone with a hero FE would think that's really important and just inherently good. But someone with inferior FE would just like not want to think about that at all, ignore it completely. However, when they are stressed or when they need to protect themselves, this comes out. And so
So would they be second guessing their extroverted thinking in that case? Because I'm picturing like a young ENTJ who's just like really enjoys doing stuff, you know, and accomplishing things, striving academically, probably, maybe not, or I'm not sure how. Yeah, I would imagine it would be something like this, or wanting to be the leader, like the class leader, or something like that. And I would imagine failure early on, so early stages of failure would cause them to retreat to FI, is what I'm picturing, and just being like and just beating themselves up because they failed. So that's what I'm picturing here.
Yep. Yes, and here's something I've observed: like ENTJs, ENTJs are like executing really hard all their life, and then later on they start to realize like, oh, I will at one point not exist anymore, and like does that matter to me? What is my legacy? And they like how can I make sure like I know that I exist, and then they do whatever they can to do that. They put their name on buildings and they start charities, and they're looking for ways to like almost like bring back their self-worth before they go. And so what I have here as well is normally people suppress this, but when it comes up for an extroverted thinker, actually, I'll first talk from personal experience. My ENTJ friend, he would every once in a while get into like these really like low moods, like just moping and like just reflecting on like, oh, like why do I do anything? What is the point of anything I'm doing here? It just all feels kind of meaningless.
So nihilistic behavior.
Yeah. And so, which is also like, it's also the start of a question though. It's the start of like what is important to me? Like it's the same question, right? And that's because he normally suppresses that, but it comes out. And here's another point written here: feeling deeply insecure about personal values or identity, which is essentially that. Generally, they'll avoid introspection, like, oh, like what matters to you? Well, for someone with hero TE, it doesn't matter what matters to me. It's like what needs to get done.
So it's not a matter of, because I see it doing two things. It's something that gets in the way. It's an impedance. And it's also not important, like you said, to accomplish the goals, because all it does is get in the way.
Yes.
I'm speaking from personal experience because I have TFI as well. And yeah, it's the same thing. It's like when I'm doing things or working on something, it's like I really got to ignore myself because, the human body is just so needy. It needs so much stuff, and it just takes away from, it's not efficient. That's probably the word that's going to come up a lot in the head of an ENTJ.
Yep.
It's just general, and as an extrovert as well is the other thing. It's like the idea of like looking within is not so important. Whereas for myself, FI is very important. again, it's not my inferior function, but it certainly manifests itself differently than it does in the ENTJ, but there are aspects of it that are similar.
Yep. And like, especially because ENTJs, ESTJs, TE is hero. So like, how do I maximize TE? Well, like I feel like throwing a tantrum right now, but that can wait. I'll put that aside. I'm gonna get it done. So like mission first. You could think about like soldiers like wanting to do something on the battlefield. Like, I'm scared, but it's not the time to be scared. Like they'll do that.
In fact, that's the pitfall for me. It's like NIFI wants to do its thing. It wants to take over, and T is like, as a parent, it's like no. Let me just get this done first. So it's not as aggressive as a hero function, but it's also it has a harder time to, because it wants to do what T wants to be T. At least I feel. At least it's in the top two functions. It wants to be the same. What I mean is it wants to do things unadulterated. It wants to do things without anything getting in the way.
Mm-hmm.
And I, while it is superior in my case, trumps TE. FI, it's like no, you're next. You come later, right? So I feel like it's probably the same for ENTJs. So I want to ask about any does any only works hand in hand with T? Probably. It's like, okay, well, how can we look at this task from a different point of view?
Yes.
They're not like looking at it from like, well, let's look at the perspective of the individual. It's just like that doesn't exist probably for an ESTJ.
No, because like in order to do that, that's essentially like saying NE is top priority, and it's not to an ESTJ. The top priority is TE, and how do I get that TE done? Well, let's NE about that. And
yeah, but what I mean is it's never about the individual, because you can NE. You can look at like the different perspectives of James, for example, or different perspectives from each individual in the group. But T is like, no, this is group, and then he's like, yeah, I'm here to help, in a childish way.
Yes.
It's TE, so that's what I was getting at.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway.
So that is okay. So inferior FI for these people, they dismiss the emotions as irrational, but also secretly fear that they are being inauthentic. They wonder sometimes, like, oh, am I going the path that is authentic to me? And it's they really won't ever get an answer because it is the inferior function. So it's just something they'll stress about and wonder. Occasionally over romanticize their personal struggles and suffering. This is like, especially when they get really stressed, right? And yes, they worry, they wonder if their whole life is meaningless. And I've seen this before with an ENTJ. And let me just say that this is simply stress talking to you. It's the inferior function is like, you're wondering if what you naturally think is right, and I'm going to say it is right. You can remain authentic, and you don't really have to listen to inferior FI saying that. The more you can rely on TE, SI, or NI, the more it'll be clear to you that is true. But that is a common thing, as I said, where in moments of stress, in moments of desire to survive, the inferior function will raise its hand and say, maybe hold on, maybe this is what you need to do in order to survive. And what I've observed is it's not.
It's contextual.
Mm-hmm. So we're moving on to FE, which is my inferior, as well as ISTP's inferior. How this shows up is awkwardness in social situations, not knowing how to do warmth. And this is very personal to me. This was something I thought through a lot when I was in school, like how to socialize. Never knew how, and I would always like try and analyze how to do it. Hyperfocus, like my natural self is I'm always thinking about logic, but suddenly I also want to like make sure like everyone is okay with what I'm doing, which is just the opposite of how I naturally am. Mm-hmm. Difficult to express emotions in natural ways. Feeling like social harmony. If someone gives me a social harmony request, I feel like I'm being blocked.
So you don't feel any obligation to fulfill said request?
Oh, I feel obligation, sure.
And therefore?
Yes.
that the weight of that is
Yes.
what blocks you.
Like it feels noisy. I'm like, it feels like a weight that someone has put on me, and I want to throw it off. Or the more mature way is to just say no to it. And either completely dismissing emotions or becoming irrationally sensitive to rejection. Yes, that has happened to me in my life. And yes, when I'm very confidently acting as myself, I don't really I block out people's emotions and opinions. But in times of vulnerability, then I become hypersensitive to that, and I want to control it. I will speak to, yes, if you want to watch the other video, I talk about that, where generally it seems that we overuse our inferior, and what I have realized is that essentially if I am consciously thinking about my inferior, I'm probably overusing. And what I've seen is my natural inferior FE is beautiful. It feels very nice as long as I'm prioritizing TI, like I'm talking about with you and you right now. This TI is not pure like cold TI. It's TI mixed in with a little FE right there, like a little sprinkle of FE, and I think that's like the sweet spot of an INTP. It's very authentic. Add that in there. Next. SI, inferior SI, ENFP, ENTP. Struggles with routine and consistency, sometimes becoming overly rigid as a reaction. Anxieties about bodily health or physical limitations. You might notice, I've noticed a lot of ENTPs, they're very unaware of their body. Difficulty recalling past details, but occasionally obsessing over a past mistake. Feeling trapped or burdened by tradition and nostalgia, suddenly clinging to comfort and familiarity under stress. So an ENTP might be all about just wanting to do something completely different from how they've ever done it, but then suddenly they want to respect Christmas, like when things get stressful, especially.
It's interesting because the ENTP that's closest to myself, she has struck a balance with tradition. I mean, she likes celebrating her birthday or celebrating other people's birthdays. She likes saying Happy New Year, for example, these types of things. And I don't think she feels burdened by it because I think she gets pleasure from that routine. But I don't know everything about this person. So I don't know, like maybe at home though, for example, I imagine this person not wanting to just always take a shower at 8 or brush your teeth at this time or do like this or eat this like that or make this like that or clean up this thing. I imagine this person not being very tidy elsewhere.
Yeah, I've also noticed this, that in an environment of a lot of love, what I've noticed is people seem to grow really healthy for functions. And so an ENTP where they've been allowed to really be ENTP, they have quite a healthy SI.
She has done that. But the one thing that you mentioned also about having anxiety with taking care of themselves, so that is something that this person struggled with a lot when she was younger. Now I don't know so much if that's the case, but it was to the point where they would just sometimes freak out, overcompensate for an ailment, and just just cancel an appointment or this kind of thing, just because I think they were overwhelmed by the situation.
Very interesting. I realize now that I've SI third, and I know what it feels like. And so if you have insecure SI, I'm sure that it can really manifest as, what do you call it? What do you call that? When hypochondria.
Oh, I know all about that. I don't know, that manifests itself in myself as well.
Mm-hmm. So
I feel like every headache I have is a brain tumor.
Yeah. So I think that also is a similar thing that happens for.
It seems that's similar to
ENPs.
Mm-hmm. At least, again, I feel like they've developed quite a lot because now their life's going really well compared to them as well.
Yeah.
They had really good home life, so like you said, like they had the love and the care and all that kind of stuff, but I think they were struggling to get out there. And as an extroverted person, that's not good. And I think now that they're doing really well with their career and exploring, and the thing is, it's like it's not. I don't even call it like, to me, it's not a career because this person's all over the place. But she finds the money, she finds the happiness in it. I mean, I'm not. This person's not rich or wealthy or anything like it. But she's satisfied, and that is amazing.
Yeah.
And so now I think this person is more leveled, more balanced.
That's awesome, by the way. That's, as a side note, I see what we're doing right now with this stuff as very much that too, fulfilling, and so it's nice. Okay, yes, inferior SI. One thing I noticed, we talk with an ENF. We've been talking with an ENFP recently, and what I noticed is her instinctual aversion to doing any process. And so I think I actually realized that I think like a government paperwork, like 20 steps maybe. I realized that's very SI. And I think for ENPs, they would just really not want to deal with that. Maybe lists of rules, things where you have to go through step by step, and like, okay, you started, now you have to go through that. There's no other options here. We already have the established procedure, so you just follow it. I think an SI type, high SI type, would love that stuff.
Yeah.
And inferior SI type would feel trapped by that.
I'm always thinking myself. I also can't stand filling out paperwork or like following other people's rules if I don't agree with them. So that's probably introverted feeling stepping in. I have like demon SI, so who knows what's going on there. But yeah, this same person that you're talking about, slightly different story. I don't know. I don't want to like give too much detail. I mean, it doesn't matter 'cause I'm not saying the name of the person. They wanted to do a particular sport, and like they were actually just kind of like upset that they weren't feeling well enough to do it. I could see the disappointment. So like they were being held back by their introverted sensing.
Yes.
Yeah, so that was also creating somewhat of an anxiety. But the cool thing is she used her NE to be like, well, let's just explore another option, which was come to our meetup, which was really cool because instead of doing the sport that she wanted to do, she came to us, and so we benefited from it.
That's a very interesting thing about how you may feel that SE often can get in the way of what you're trying to do, and what she spoke about was SI getting in the way of what she was trying to do. Right?
Yeah, and I talk. We'll get to SE next, but I talk time and time again about how, frankly, I like SE. I like extroverted sensing when it's when it's helpful, when it's useful. But the things that I have absolutely no control over, those are the things that are annoying. I mean, just loud noises, or especially when I'm working. Like there are people around me that just, for the life of me, don't understand what sound does to people or can do, and it's just obnoxious, and it's all day or all night, and those types of people like really drive me insane. And so it's not the person, obviously. Well, I mean, it's a combination of that and the extroverted sensing. With NITE, it's like TE is all about efficiency. NI's like, well, hey, dude, just get my vision, just get to the end point. Get to where we're going, manifest this thing, so that we can help humanity. And SE just gets in the way. So SE is in the way of both NI and TE, obviously, because TE doesn't benefit that much from extroverted sensing, unless I'm doing something that requires me to be in the moment, and that would actually be a nice combo. So it's contextual. It's depends on the circumstances. Anyway, with that being said,
I will raise something I want to ask you, because I'm building a theory right now where I would almost suggest that the primary fundamental thing going on is a frustration and an emotional reaction, and then how that is experienced in your life is through your inferior function. So the more stressed and frustrated you are in your life, the more sensitive you are to SE.
Yeah, I've actually thought about this myself for years, or maybe prior to even thinking about MBTI. I wonder, like, am I more sensitive to things when I'm tired or being annoyed all day, or let's say things aren't going well, or I can't make it, like I'm still in the planning phase, so I really need to focus, or it's not going well, or maybe I experienced a failure. I'd say, yeah, it is more intense. At least it appears to be. So that is a tough one because there are some times where I'm feeling pretty okay and I'm still like it's like a car crash. Like SE just comes in because there's just somebody that decides they want to just ruin my life with noise. It's usually noise based, like, and smells too. I mean, with cooking. When you live with people, oh, I hate it. Anyway, or smells outdoor. You'll hear me talk like when we're walking. You haven't heard me yet, but like in the summertime, like when I'm walking around, I'm constantly complaining about smells.
I've heard you.
It doesn't. Oh, that's why I have done it, and it has nothing to do with. But yeah, if my mood is bad, yeah, it will be worse. It has to be. It just makes sense.
So I've been reflecting on how it's almost, you know, chicken or egg. It's a feedback loop that almost it's like mic feedback. It like amplifies upon itself, and the SE creates additional stress. And this is why you might call it a grip, because it's hard to tell what started it, but each thing is now going to amplify it again. And I've been thinking.
I just continue to look at it as electricity or just like a battery. You know, your battery drains slowly with your introverted functions, or even recharges. If you want to look at it that way.
With your higher functions.
Yeah. No, T is draining too, but
Okay.
T is less draining than SE. But
Okay.
NIFI are both almost refillers. Like
Yeah.
they fill the battery. And so SE is the drain. It's the one that just drains the energy as fast as possible.
Mhm.
And so it's obvious that if you're low on energy already for other reasons, like I said, if I'm working really hard, things aren't really going well, like T is like kind of upset. So that's like when T is not happy, the battery goes down. And so you're already working with like 20%, and then you're just draining yourself with that SE. And so you get to zero, or I don't know, like negative numbers almost. And that's when it really shows the dark side of that. And you even start dripping into, or like falling into the shadow functions even at that point.
Yeah. And here's an image that comes to mind for me is,
Oh, wow, I actually have a realization.
no, yeah. An image that comes to mind for me is when someone gets into like the grip stress of their inferior function, it's like trying to hold on to sand and like it's just going through your fingers. And that's why I think of it like a feedback loop of just increasing stress, because when I feel that I'm like losing control, then the most obvious place that I can feel that is in FE. And then I try and like control the FE and like I'm not that good at it. And also like it's just it just amplifies my sense of loss of control, and so it just becomes like this continuous or like feedback cycle.
I'm gonna stick with my battery analogy though. Like I guess it's like you have other batteries maybe, but the realization I came with is when SE is doing its thing in a negative way. I'm gonna call it a negative way. So when you're in that what did you call it, the stage of something's bad, grip stage.
Grip stress, yeah.
That's where NE kicks in. So SE is like I'm aware of stuff, and then NE is like, all right, we gotta look for other options, and that's when I start doing 4 or 5. So I do SE NE.
Okay.
Which, if you think about it, that's quite. Actually, I never thought about the fact that your 5th function is actually the same as your 4th. They're both extroverted for it, and vice versa.
Interesting.
That's weird.
Mm.
And that's dangerous because double extroversion for an introvert, and from a shadow function with your inferior function, that's when you start getting the icky stuff. And so that's what I'm trying to say. Like when I'm freaking out, so I'm in freak out mode or grip stage.
Stress. Or
the SE is like
survival mode.
Yeah, survival mode. It's like I'm trying to figure, and then it's like, okay, this isn't working. We got to find other options. So then I'm just like entering into extroverted intuition, and so that's just generally what I'm even using words like generally. I'm not feeling stressed now, but I'm trying to imagine it. So I'm trying to embody it with with my thoughts, how I'm talking. But
I also hear like just like it's like burning the candle at both ends, burning the rope at both ends. It's just like burning out.
It has to be because you're using intuition and sensing. Those are polarities. So you know, it's literally like you're separating yourself, or pulling yourself apart.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Oh, okay.
Again, digressions and tangents, etc. And I can't help but wonder, FETE for you would be the.
Oh yeah.
So what does that look like?
Oh, you know, when I TE, like I went through phases of my life where I was like, oh well, I guess I need to be productive, and I would try to TE, and the way I TE, is just like militarily. I would just angrily say it's time now and like just like push people around because I just knew I've written about this. Okay, I knew that if I didn't do that, then I would forget. But actually, like I haven't actually experienced it as FET. I've experienced it just as TE, and almost like pushing FE aside in order to TE.
I guess I don't know how to explain it. It's like when you're watching a movie where you see like somebody's flashing from one to the other. So I'm like flashing from SE to NE to SE. So it's like I'm there, but I'm not. I'm there, but I'm not. It's almost like I'm glitching out. You know, it's like I gotta figure this out. And it's like, yeah, right now. But it's like, but we have to look at the other options. It's like, well, because this isn't working. So NITEFI is all like, yeah, that whole plan's none of it's working. So we have to figure it out. And like, it almost feels like there's a time limit. I don't know why. I mean, sometimes there is a time limit. Actually, that's how I behave. If I'm like, that's why planning is so important to an INTJ, is because we don't want to get to the point where we have to wing it. That's why we always have backup plans.
And I can hear like you, like it's almost like you don't want to see me when we're like that.
Well, you don't. I mean, these are the times when, like, for example, when I get super angry at the bus system or the transportation system in Korea, because everything's planned out, right? I have 3 backup plans, but when all 3 of those fail, I have no choice but to act in the moment. So I'm like, well, I got to be there by this time. So SE's like looking around for options, which if you hear what I just said, in the moment, I'm looking for options. So it's like random points and also different perspectives. Well, not different perspectives, but still, I'm quickly brainstorming. I can do it, but it's hard. And I imagine someone who has those higher in the SENE or NESE would be able to handle that more astutely. Or rather,
no one does that. No one has that.
No, I imagine like an ESTP just like, whoop, I got it. Oh, I'll just do that. We'll just I'll get a taxi. You know. Yeah. It's actually that's what when I have enough money, I usually just grab a taxi. I give up. I just give up on my plan. Get a taxi.
Yeah. I see. What I hear is, and I hear this. I hear like what people colloquially talk about as stress and the stress response. That's what it sounds like. Survival response. Yeah. Just flailing in the moment. Fight or flight is the other phrase that I thought of. Fight or flight.
Appointments mean everything. Time means everything. And FI says, well, dude, if you expect people to respect you and your time, which is the most important resource to, or most important thing to an INTJ, then you have to do it too. So you have to be on time. There's no other option. And so that creates stress. Learning how to let go is important. Yeah. But just for the sake of getting through these.
Yeah. Okay. So, now we're on to actually Inferior SE. So, did we cover
just hit the
points. I'll read the points. Sudden reckless physical indulgences, binging food, shopping, drinking, sex, etc.
I'll speak to each of these just because it is mine. Just to let you know that yes, that is true for me. If I'll go shopping, I used to drink. I don't sexual activity. I suppose that also might have been the case when I was younger. And binging food, yeah, that's usually more of a depression thing. Like if I'm at home and I'm just working on a project, it's not going well, I'll just start eating a bunch of snacks maybe, but I don't do that anymore.
Feeling out of touch with your body and surroundings.
That's me always.
Inferior SE makes sense. Ignoring sensory details and then becoming hypersensitive to them under stress.
Yeah, so like you brought up earlier, I guess when you are more fit, mentally, physically, etc. I'm probably ignoring a lot more than I am when I'm not doing well.
It says you're either dressing functionally or obsessing over appearances as overcompensation.
I don't know what dressing functionally means. Like wearing like cargo pants so I can put like utility clothes. Like what does that mean?
I think of Mark Zuckerberg having a wardrobe full of all the same outfits so that he doesn't have to decide every morning.
Oh, no, I mean, that's me. Oh, okay. Yeah, that's me.
Okay, that's functional.
But then also there are cases where I'm like, I want to look a certain way today, and then I just have to.
Okay. Feeling deeply unsettled by too much unpredictability or chaos.
I can't stand.
An INTJ is always in their head, but suddenly goes on a wild, impulsive shopping spree and regrets it later.
Yeah, I get buyer's regret for you might buy one thing, even a small thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Next here is inferior NI, ESFP and ESTP, and as personal detail is my father is ESTP, and I heard a story of his. He had like a depressive episode at some point in his life, and now that makes a lot more sense. I'll read these points and then we can talk about it. So the points: feeling existential, inferior NI. So when you're in the grip, when you are stressed and you are just in the grips of NI, you feel existentially lost or deeply insecure about the future, because NI is all about what is my path, right?
And I just want to interject, like, actually, really, this is curious to me because NI is just so natural. So I'm finally hearing what inferior NI, how it manifests in someone. I mean, I know these details, but I'm really eager to hear about your father.
Yes. Deeply insecure about the future, worrying about fate, destiny, or hidden meanings behind events, over analyzing situations, even though they normally act on impulse. So, as a side note, right, inferior NI means that you have hero SE, which means no past, no future. Right now, what's going on? What's all the little details about this moment? Oh, he's wearing this shirt. He's saying this. He raised his eyebrows. Like these things. But when you are in stress, then you go to future looking. You're looking into predicting the future. So over analyzing situations, getting stuck in weird paranoid thought spirals, trying to force a grand vision even when it doesn't fit their normal style. And ESTP, who's usually all about actions, acting in the moment, but suddenly freezes up overthinking every possible consequence of a decision. There was an episode of just deep stress at some point in his life where he became deeply worried about his future, and that's how
that's common. That's how too.
Yes, so that was the crisis. And like just feeling like, well, what I heard was like feeling like other people are like talking about him and planning stuff behind his back. Paranoia, and like just wondering like, what am I supposed to do next?
Yeah, because the ESTPs all go. They don't question things. They just always move. They're just moving.
Yeah.
Constantly. They know, like it's not that they know where to go. It's that they don't care about knowing where to go.
Exactly.
And there's gonna be a point in your life where there was probably an outside factor that caused this.
Oh yeah.
Obviously. And then it's like, oh, whoa, I'm used to just going all the time. Now I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
Let's think about what I have to do. And already now that's NI.
Yeah.
And that's going to be uncomfortable.
Yes, and that is inauthentic and actually like thinking larger. My father's extended family are all high NI users.
I'm sorry. How is using your inferior function inauthentic?
When you put your inferior function high in your priority list,
okay,
that's inauthentic.
I see. I guess for me, it's like it's curious how does one healthily utilize inferior NI, or what does that look like?
Yes, well, my current theory is that if you are properly like maximizing your hero, you are also automatically naturally maximizing your inferior.
And so maybe while they're using SE, there's something sort of guiding them in a direction, and that's NI working behind the scenes.
Yes.
Because it's like SE obviously isn't just random. It's not random. It's not it's like, I need to go to the store. How do you get there? Well, SE just says, I see road, go straight road. I know you turn right. Like, but that's still the how and knowing when to slow down, for example, or whatever. Like that's not NI, but like part of that is NI. I can feel it. I just don't know how to explain it.
Yeah. So this is what my father does in any situation. He just immediately starts gathering like this in the moments points. For example, like, what are the restaurants that you like to eat around here? And then he just collects all of these restaurants for a certain area of the world.
Mm-hmm.
And like through that, like that's not completely useless. Now you have now you start to develop a sense of what kind of neighborhood that place is. Like, but like that sense is for him very unconscious. It's like he collect like, oh, there, like this area has like 20 Italian restaurants. This place must have like a large Italian population, or like this is like, maybe this is Little Italy or something.
But he wouldn't say. It's like, yeah, that's really fascinating, because SE would say like, we don't know that.
Yeah, yeah. But also the other way that this would emerge is he's gathered all of this information, and then he gets a sense, oh, people like to do this around here, or I want to go try that. I want to do that. I want to do that. That's NI. That's NI.
It's premeditated.
Yes.
Well, premeditated.
But I would say it's almost like yours might be like a mile long, and his is like this, like tomorrow long. But what he's doing, he's just collecting all these dots, and then the dots start to form little line. But when especially if people dismiss his natural way of doing things and say you have to think more long term, ESTP, then that's when you just go to a very inauthentic, stressful place, and you can, like, an ESTP can feel completely out of their depth.
If someone said that to me and I was an ESTP, I was like, you have to think long term, but you have to bite me. Like, I would just be like, well, go away.
Yeah. So I feel that part of what may have happened is the NI dominant people in the family may have spoken to, saying like, there's not enough NI in your life, and it could have triggered like this sense of like what do you call it? Just like you're not satisfactory, and so he could have pushed for the NI, and it could have caused a lot of stress.
I mean, making someone else feel inferior would probably lead someone to use their inferior function more often.
There you go. Yeah.
Like SIT societies, forcing people like, I'm more well equipped for it than like an INFP, INTP, or something like this is. I feel like that would also cause you to just really feel bogged down. Like, oh, well, everybody above me, around me is saying like, everybody does like this, so this is how we have to do it. You better do it. You're gonna just feel like, oh, I can't be myself.
Yeah. And my view is, I've used FE to get through those situations. Like,
yeah,
I'll do it for you, even though I don't get why I'm doing it. I'll do it for you, and then that leads down just a lot of inefficient ways of being inauthentic. I had a point about ESTP here,
and we didn't talk about ESFPs at all.
Yes,
because they are different.
Yes.
But I imagine this probably manifests similarly. An ESFP I met, she just suddenly she's the person just all it cares about people seeing her and what she's doing, and just full on SE, full on ESFP feeling. And just suddenly we sit down, it's like, I don't know what I'm doing in my future. I need to feel, I don't know, like, if I can do it. I was like, why? First of all, why are you confiding in me? Like, why do people do that? Why are INTJs so easy to, like, this person barely knows me? And she wouldn't do this with anyone else. I guarantee every person she meets, it's all go. It's like, I have to be on all the time. That being said, that was MI. I could feel it.
That's
very awkward, and it didn't last. I mean, it was like it never happened, it feels like. But I feel like subconsciously it's something she's really, really wrestling with. And eventually it's going to catch up with her. No, it will. Because I was using my NI to see, like, well, the rate you're going with what you have and like what you have resource wise, you're going to get tired even of yourself.
Okay.
Eventually. Yeah. Anyway, That being said, none of that matters.
Yeah. Well, So that is a great example of inferior NI. I also remember this when I was between jobs, and
in Wozniak.
Yeah. When I was between jobs and I was doing Hero TI to figure out what to do, my father looked at what I was doing and he thought that I was doing it an incorrect way, because he was projecting from his own experience that if he stopped and thought about it, it was going to create a whole lot of problems. So he said, like, you don't pause life to solve life. You need to just keep going.
Oh boy.
So that's him saying Hero SE was how I solved these situations. So you should Hero SE too. There's just a misunderstanding, miscommunication there, right?
Yeah, it's the idea of stopping to think is not moving.
Yes.
So it's your typical projection.
Yes. It's just.
But it's
the information
that's
is
him caring.
Yeah, exactly.
That's just pure love right there.
Oh, exactly. I completely I understand now. Now that I understand SC dominant more, he was that was his experience of discovering authenticity, and he was sharing that with me. And so, if you are an SC dom, maybe you may notice that too. If you just get into action, then you just feel so healthy once again, and you can get out of that NI.
Oh, sorry, you're saying me?
No, I'm saying that.
I'm just curious if he has parent TI. Of course, I guess SE is still always going to say like no.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
When I think about it too long, I miss my opportunity. So I know that you should also just go for it. Maybe that's something he thought or something. I don't know. Yeah. What TI even would do with it.
Well, like he likely saw he saw the situation, and he saw in his own life when he stopped to wallow, that was the wrong direction. So that's what he was talking about. Inferior NI of grip, So let's move to the inferior NE.
Oh boy.
This is a very I'll read the points first. Inferior NE, which is ISFJ and ISTJ. I've seen this a lot. And so inferior NE manifests as anxiety about uncertainty, over planning to prevent surprises. They have hero SR, right? So stability, certainty, comfort, memory. Am I certain that this will lead to a good result? Have I experienced that before? So their inferior NE, which is the willingness to try new things, is going to show up as anxiety about uncertainty, over planning to prevent surprises, worrying about unlikely worst case scenarios, feeling deeply unsettled by abstract or unpredictable ideas, struggling to go with the flow or adapt to new patterns, either rejecting creativity or randomly diving into unrealistic, chaotic ideas. That's when things stop working in their lives, they go into survival mode and try to NE it, right? An example of this is an ISTJ who suddenly wants to drop everything and start an unplanned road trip, but immediately regrets it. It's like crisis mode, ISTJ, right? I do think about how we are currently in Korea, and it really does feel like an SI-dominant culture. And so the immediate reaction to a new change or a new idea to brainstorm is, ooh, like that is not a place I'm comfortable going as an SI dom, right? And I have seen like I had an ISFJ, my brother's ISFJ, but I also had an ISFJ friend in college, and I think college is actually a place where a lot of NE people like start to bloom and open up, and they really like discover their NE. And I think she also felt the pressure to do NE, so she would do it, but she would do it in a very ISFJ like way, but I think she also discovered that that's not her most authentic way of going about the world, and so she pulled it back.
I've noticed in Korea traditions and what is it called when you feel like you're gonna get bad luck if you do something? Superstitions are also, I think, SI thing.
Oh yeah.
Even those, like, people are grudgingly keeping up with traditions at this point.
Mm-hmm.
What did I say? Grudgingly.
Yeah.
And these are SI doms. Like it's like they feel this duty to do it, and I can tell that even they don't even want to do it anymore. Like I'm talking about, like, if you don't eat miyeokguk on New Year's or on your birthday, you're gonna die or you're gonna have bad luck. And it's like, I don't know, like young people, they don't care that much. And so especially if and I'm seeing more of like children of SI doms being like just reluctantly eating it.
Yeah. And
doing it, and like you can tell they don't care, and the parents are just like, well, you have to. And it's like, I really want to ask, why do you have to do that? I just want to hear their answer, but I'm just like, nah, I'm not gonna stir the pot. Just let them eat their seaweed, and it's good food. It's like, I don't want to eat it in the morning.
Yeah.
Anyway, And it's like there's a lot of birthdays. You know what I mean? I just find it really fascinating, and so it's like I wouldn't dare like be like, hey, let's shake things up, let's try something different, because like I feel like there are any like, oh, should we? I don't know. Like, let's think about how we can approach this. And I've seen them try like cooking something they used like they cook every time the same way. They're like they feel this pressure to try new things. They watch YouTube like, hey, if you sprinkle a little bit of this on there, it's gonna taste different. But then they just completely screw up the dish. And so I feel like that's also inferior NE. Like, well, let's try it out. And it's like, ooh,
Yeah.
I wish I hadn't. They regret it, you know? And they'll even comment like, oh, this is why I always do it this way, you know?
Yeah,
And
exactly.
I'm like, okay, I understand that. And I just because we're talking about SI DOMs, I'm like, I think that's going to be my thing. I'm always going to go off topic.
Okay, no problem.
It's like, I see similarities between myself and them, but also not. It's like I look sometimes like an ISTJ because I will create a routine
Mhm.
out of efficiency sake. So it's actually
Okay.
a TE thing,
Yes.
and it looks a lot like I'm doing SI, but I'm not. And so
Uh-huh.
like that's something I hope I guess later we'll talk about, because I think that's really interesting because I can
Yeah.
I mean I kind of don't like it because I don't want to be called something I'm not, but in the same vein I don't really care. I just found it fascinating that because when I first learned about what introverted sensing was, I was like, well, that's weird. Am I doing that? And I thought, no, because I don't really care. Like, I don't want a routine. I don't want to be doing the task at all. Is the point? That's the whole point of automating it. I don't want to be present during it. I don't want to do it. So it's better to just because I do it every day. I eat breakfast. The way I prepare to go to the gym, everything is all the same. And as soon as I don't do that, my whole world goes into like chaotic SE. And that sounds like an ISTJ thing, but it's not. So, anyway.
Yeah. I think TE. I think the nature of TE is that I feel like almost TE like looks at the world as a database of like knowledge to tap.
Yeah, that's what I'm
and
doing.
and so like that knowledge is already there, so why might as well use it. And so that might sound kind of SI, but SI is more I think I want to say like personal experience and
Yeah,
people's
like
personal experience.
I will get that, like you just said, when you said tap information, I'm getting it from anywhere. It doesn't, whether it's my past experience, maybe yours, someone else's, I read it somewhere, it doesn't matter. If I can squeeze it in there and fix something, I'm going to use it.
Yeah, yeah, but I think SI will prioritize, like SI Dom will prioritize, like we haven't done that before, even though it is out there in the knowledge to tap. I have never done it before. I haven't seen anyone do it and it's be successful before. I'm gonna distrust it automatically. It's not authentic to me to try that.
Yeah, what I'm doing is very extroverted.
Yes, yes. Um, so, and I will also say that from the what I find beautiful about the types is there's a reason why this is inferior. It's inferior in order to reinforce the perspective that this type has. Like the fact that I'm Hero TI also kind of necessitates that I have inferior FE so that I can even more TI, you know?
Yeah, I guess you're saying it somehow not energizes it. It kind of highlights it like a highlighter.
And energizes, I think, is a pretty good one.
Okay.
Because it's like I go towards FE and it's like it just feels bad. It's like no, go back to TI, you know.
Again, we didn't talk about this, but SE I use that to feed my NI. So I don't know why I'm feel so good about my inferior function when it's like I said, when it's helpful.
Yeah.
It's just I guess I'm trying really because we're known as pessimists. And I think sometimes I really am trying not to be, but in the same vein, it's like I'm not. I mean, I'm always looking for the better option, but just that even that sounds pessimistic, right? It's like, well, that implies there's a bad option. Anyway, that being said, my SE helps to feed my NI, so it's I don't know if that's highlighting NI, but it's certainly it's helpful.
Yes.
Yin and yang, even if you will.
Yeah, I might even suggest just I'll say this shortly. I might even suggest that my NE is somewhat pessimistic because I just assume people haven't NE'd enough, and so it's like people haven't looked enough. That's my automatic assumption. So it's almost like the parent function is somewhat pessimistic.
Yeah, and then our parent functions are extroverted, so that's the thing that people are going to experience when they speak to us. They're not going to hear well, I can see it when I say something you don't like, but you typically won't hear TI or NI.
Uh-huh.
Or, yeah.
So like actually going over inferior NE is very interesting here because it helps me really understand. I have parent NE, so I say like people are NEing enough, and then if the person has inferior NE, then I'm essentially telling them like you aren't, you are inferior. You're not good enough. Almost like that's kind of what I tell them. So it's probably not a good thing to be too forceful about to an SI dom. Like, hey, you're not NEing enough.
I don't know. We'll see when we get to TE if that's how I feel.
Okay.
Inferior
So
TI.
let's go to inferior TI. ENFJ, ESFJ. And ENFJ, ESFJ, they have an anxiety about not being smart enough or not making sense. I've seen this as they read a lot of books and they try and get like some degree, and they point to their degree to say, "Oh, I know what I'm talking about." You know, overthinking technical details and getting stuck in analysis paralysis. The ESFJ friend has talked about that. Doubting their own logic, but also distrusting external input. Feeling the need to prove their intelligence when insecure, which I just talked about. Either dismissing logic or hyper-focusing on it in an unnatural way. Here's an example. An ENFJ who's usually people-oriented suddenly spends 10 hours nitpicking a technical issue to prove they can think logically. I have an ENFJ friend who reads a lot, and it somewhat does feel compensatory, just like oh, I need to make sure people know that I know what I'm talking about.
Especially since they're people pleasers, right? That's probably what's happening there.
Probably that too.
I need people to know. That's funny to me. That's because it's so anti.
Yeah,
I don't want that. I secretly I want to be acknowledged, but like quietly, or just I want to know that I'm being acknowledged, but I don't want a party. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then our ESFJ friend talked about how when they're feeling inadequate, they start trying to use TI.
Mm-hmm.
They get moody, and they try and like analyze what's going on, and you know, as is the inferior function, there's not really going to be many things found there. It's just going to be a place where you get kind of stuck. So he realized, or we talked about it and realized, that if you go back to your parent SI, you can get out of that, and you can say, oh, I remember that like these things worked in the past, let's go there, and then you can stay confident. Okay.
We really went through TI real fast.
Well,
I don't really have any input, unfortunately. That's probably why.
Yeah, me neither. I will say the other experience I've had is ESFJs really appreciate me when they're not trying to fix my FE, and instead they just listen to my TI. I think they find me useful as like a TI resource, so that they don't have to do the TI themselves.
Well, they're glad you're there, so that they're free to do their top two. Probably. I guess. Well, I don't have much information. Is also those two types that I mean, ENFJs are okay, but ESFJs usually I don't get along. I can't get past their FE to even see their TI. So
yeah,
that's what happens there.
I also had an ESFJ coworker who became an accountant.
Oh,
and it's very clear that she has a great ability to remember all of that, and also it does feed that TI aspect of her. And then it's also clear that she's an FE dom, because that's what she's focused on. But it's interesting to see. That is a good fit for her.
I can't imagine how FE really manifests itself in the day of an accountant.
Well, what I'm saying is
it with family?
Well, the majority of how she conducts herself at work is how she treats other people, and making sure like people go to lunch together, that kind of stuff. And then her job.
I can't. That sounds. I would fire
her. She's ESFJ.
Because it sounds like she's not giving her all to her job.
She probably cannot do it with as much authenticity as like an ISTJ would. That's true.
I guess what I said was probably harsh.
No, it's just your observation. Any other observations about inferior TI?
I'd rather not. TI, no. I'll just be honest. I have very little experience.
Yeah, that makes sense. Me as well. We've only recently, like, we're gonna learn more as we meet more FE donks. Inferior TE. The FI dominant INFP and ISFP, they have inferior TE. I have experience with this as my mom is INFP. Struggling with external structure, but sometimes obsessing over it in bursts. Okay, when we have guests coming, my mom suddenly wants to clean everything up in a frenzy, and it's very clear that this is like a survival mode tactic because it's just like chaotic. And have you ever heard of the meme of the mom saying, like, you don't need to do that, I'll handle it. And then she ends up alone working on something, and then she says, how come no one's helping me? Like that was very much my mom in those situations.
I thought that was an ISFJ thing.
I can't imagine that.
INFPs, like, isn't their whole shtick that, like, oh, the world is better because I'm here?
Yes. However,
and so it's like I can just picture FI being like, if I were visiting someone else, I wouldn't want my house to look this way, so I'm gonna clean it up.
Well, okay, that's the healthy, like everything's going perfectly fine INFP.
Okay.
But when you are in TE grip.
Okay, when in TE grip.
Yeah.
I've noticed a theme here. I don't know what question, how you put your information together. It seems like we're not. I thought we were going to explain what the inferior functions are, but I don't know. I feel like they're just being portrayed in such a negative view here, because we're talking about all of the grip. Like, I just don't feel like people are always in grip when they're using the inferior function.
That's true.
And I feel like we're kind of like not showing it that way.
Okay, so yeah, I guess we are talking about the grips, and right after I finish talking about the grips, I can go over it one more time to quickly talk about how.
I think an overview makes sense.
Okay, so next bullet here: feeling overwhelmed by tasks, schedules, and efficiency demands. My mom always talks about writing out schedules, writing out plans, like all these things that she has to do.
She's not good at it,
and
right?
she doesn't really do it that often.
Okay.
And so it's really just the call of inferior TE here.
There's like this small voice there telling you something. It's like, what? Okay.
Yeah. Avoiding confrontation, but then suddenly snapping and trying to take charge. Yes. Deep imposter syndrome about their competence. I've seen this. Overcompensating by trying to optimize things in a way that doesn't feel natural. Yes. Example: an INFP who normally rejects strict plans but suddenly freaks out about wasting time and tries to rigidly plan their entire life. Yes, my mom is very go with the flow, very accommodating for everything around her, but also has this voice inside that says things aren't organized enough.
Interesting. She's a perspective type. Well, I mean, no, actually not.
Mm-hmm.
It's an introverted judging type, actually, but it depends on your point of view.
Yep.
I just think that's interesting. I guess I see that makes sense. It's like TE that doesn't know what it's doing. It's like, I know this is my job. I know I have a role here, and that is very important to me. I'm not quite sure what it is, but I know I gotta get stuff done. So let's do it.
Yeah.
When it's my turn, it's like suddenly all three functions have been. Yeah, and it's like, oh, you're calling on me? All right, let's go, guys.
Yeah.
And it doesn't know what it's doing because it doesn't have much practice.
Yeah. And, I think there's just a general culture. There's an air, it's in the air that people should work on their weaknesses. And so I think like people with inferior TE especially, would be aware that they have inferior TE. And then they'd be trying to work on it constantly because the world is kind of saying TE is what's important in the world,
But I also feel like people don't, like, they should still start from the top. I know, like, why would you try to work on your weaknesses? So, like, let's say you just somehow know that your inferior function is lacking, but you also don't notice that your hero function is not doing really well, or your parent.
Oh yeah. Well, see, like, but here's the thing, like,
I would say a top-down approach is probably better, at least to check in with your.
I completely agree.
Okay.
However, like not many people understand that NI is a superpower, and so you may end up neglecting it or thinking that it's not important, and then going to TE for you, for example, right? And I mean, TI always feels like it's just getting in the way of productivity, and so people like in a very conventional TESI in a TESI world, everything else is considered less important.
And I mean, how can I say, like, the impact of this type of society is not lost on myself. I mean, just because I have T as a parent function doesn't mean I'm just somehow immune to everything. Like, I still want to use introverted intuition, and I don't. While I can handle it for a certain amount of time, like, okay, we have TE, is that something we have to do stuff now? That gets so tiresome, and frankly, I'm resistant from the outset because whatever. I'm resistant from the beginning because it's not what I want to do. It's not my plan. It's not my vision. It has nothing to do with me per se. And so I am just as resistant to it. So I guess the point I want to make here is I guess if I was a TE Dom, then I wouldn't question it. But it's even having it just down as a parent function, it's not just some natural thing that I'm just like, oh, okay, well, it's TE time. Like, that's no way. Nope.
Yeah.
NIFI will speak up immediately.
Oh, yeah.
I just wanted that to be clear.
That makes complete sense.
TESI or SITE sounds even worse to me in a society because I'm SI demon function. That's not a good combo for me either. It's a good combo for me when I'm in charge. When we're fulfilling my vision or my plan, there's nothing better than that. So I won't disagree with that.
Yeah. I will speak here. When my mom is healthy, she's doing FINE. She's sharing her observations she's made about just like kind of the moral rules and the moral laws that she observes in the world. It changes people's lives. But when she feels that she's not good enough at TE, then that like this insecurity can come up.
So I feel like ENTJ, STJ, INTJ, ISTJ would rub her the wrong way because I would be expecting more from this person.
Yes.
And getting a whole bunch of FI, and I'm like, okay, because I have FI, so I know it's like there's a time and place for that, and they're like, no, now's the time. It's like, no, there's a time and place for that, and they're like, this is who I am, and I can see conflict there even between an INTJ and an INFP.
Yeah, well, to share, my sister-in-law is ESTJ, and they had many conflicts because they have completely opposite values, right?
Wow.
And the ESTJ would speak from TE like, hey, we're working together here. What is your role? What is my role? And my mother, who's FINE, would say, well, just let the roles handle themselves. Yeah. So yeah. But see,
I would love to just like create like a fake world just full of non-TESI or like erase all the INTJs, ESTJ, all those. And I wonder what it looks like. A room full of INFPs, INTPs, ISFPs. And what do we have left here? I guess ISTPs would look like. Or no, maybe like ENFP. Like I'm picturing like a world of just TI and NE or something, all those combos. Like, what does that look like?
Yeah, well,
chaos.
I would suggest, let me just, this is complete conjecture. I believe that India has a lot of FINE, has a lot of respect for FINE and a lot of respect for NIFE, and for example, like they have like what do you call them? Ashrams, and like just places that are allowed to fully embrace a spiritual view of the world. TE is low.
Put me in a really awkward place.
Yeah, well, that's no problem. I'm just
gonna. I have a lot to say that I'm not going to say.
So I've noticed that a lot of people with high TE, they go to India and they're like, what? This place exists.
Talk about inferior SE being set off, by the way.
Yeah. Yeah. So but see, like there are beautiful things about that as well.
Oh.
And yes, well, for example, like I love the book, the Bhagavad Gita. which is not T. And so I almost feel like the world is this beautiful place where when we can allow all of this to mix together and coexist, healthiest. Yeah. But yes, that's what I've observed. Like, if you want to see a place that is now introducing TE into the ecosystem, but it wasn't really something highly valued, then you can look at India, I think.
Yeah, I just economically they've changed so much recently. That's why I'm hearing a lot about that. And TSI people are just super excited about that. And I'm thinking, but people who I had a colleague from India that's from a small town, so she just said, well, that's not even India anymore. That's just in, she said, like in New Delhi or in the larger cities, it's like the rest of the whole country is like not involved. So anyway.
Yeah. I think it's all going according to plan. I think the mix is actually the healthiest. I will go over every function, and I will talk about how it looks healthily in my estimation. In my estimation, when someone is being fully authentically themselves and they are not questioning that their 4 functions, and they like, if you say your 4 functions are enough, and you are relying on your hero and your parents, I think your inferior is nice and healthily expressed. Inferior FI, like ESTJ, ENTJ, they execute and they go home after their day of a nice hard day's work, and they say, "This is great. I'm doing my purpose.
You did a great job today.
You did a great job." FI is happy. There's nothing more like
couldn't have done it better.
Speaking purely objectively through the resources I have, couldn't have done anything.
I think it's great because it's like they're recharging that whole idea of like I'm great. I'm doing well, everything's going well. Tomorrow's a new day, let's do it all over again. Whereas if you weren't healthily, if you're just like, you could have done this, you should have done that, and then you're gonna start the next day and you're gonna end up in a weird old pit of FI, like a negative pit of FI.
Absolutely. And I will also mention that, generally speaking, I think a much healthier way to engage with your inferior is through your parent. So ESTJ using SI very well allows them to say, okay, I used SI, so yes, my FI is good. I'm going towards my personal vision, so yes, I'm fulfilling my purpose. FE, in my own experience, when I'm doing TI and E and I'm saying I'm going to experiment, I'm going to explore, and that's my purpose, then my FE naturally comes up. That's what I've observed. When I speak, I'm not like coldly being logical. I'm speaking with a hint of any FE, and I'm also speaking like the things I've discovered I think are very important, and I think people should know. And so that's FE. SI. So I'm going to say, generally speaking, inferior functions are expressed healthily when the person has high confidence in who they are. And inferior SI expressed well, I think it would be a respect for SI, but not a feeling of like I'm not good enough at SI.
No, not dread. It's like, you do your extroversion, and when you're stuck up by yourself, when you have to be alone, you're just like, yep, okay, it's not go time right now. I'm not exploring the outside world. Let's just do what we used to doing. Have our little routine. Don't question it, because tomorrow again is a new day. I can explore more tomorrow.
Yep, yeah. And like we can do Christmas. Like it's not,
okay, or that.
It doesn't feel like a trap. It's like I've done my NE and I've done everything I feel responsible for doing. So I can also allow this. Inferior SE. Can you speak to like when?
Yeah, as I was talking about earlier, it's like I'm working hard. I'm working towards my vision. Maybe there's a hole. I usually just see it as like a hole to be filled, or it's like, oh, I'm trying to connect these 2 dots, but there's something missing there. Let's go out in the real world and just see if I can spark some ideas here. And it's grounding. That's the other thing, because we talked privately just off camera. before about you said that I'm more grounded than you or other types that aren't. I guess N types perhaps.
I would say
And I
low
wasn't
SE.
quite. I was like, oh, I don't know about that, but no, that's exactly what's beautiful. Like the balance that is INTJ. I'm 50-50. Well, not, but can be. So what I mean by that is I can go from NI to SE, and so that's like I can be in both worlds at any given time. So that's what's good when you're able to do it. So again, if you're in a bad mood, if you're stressed out, or just there's stuff out of my control. If it's a noisy place, like there's nothing that's going to fix that. I have to figure out a way, whether it's some way to cancel the noise or get away. So that's why spontaneity happens like this. Like, come on, like, you know what? I'm just gonna get my car and go somewhere quiet. You know, I don't have a car now, but that was the case before. But again, healthy SE is exactly like I said. It's like information gathering. It's maybe just dressing nice and feeling good about it, and getting compliments from people. That feels pretty good. FI's already doing all right, but a little boost there, and not caring about how I look is another thing. I mean, having functional wardrobes or not, it doesn't matter. I mean, I wear what I like, but when my SE is like questioning itself is when I'm like, oh, I'm gonna wear a striped shirt today or something I wouldn't normally wear and I thought I liked, and then I'm just like I'm trying to force myself to like it because it's like, well, I know I might look good, and like you start questioning yourself. Unhealthy SE. Healthy SE, do what you like.
You do you.
You do you.
You do you, and then and I feel just the general trend is healthy inferior is it's expressed automatically.
And like I'm going to the gym, I use that as a powerful tool. Like not every day, but quite often I message you at that time and I'm like, bunch of ideas, right? I'm just like massive ideas because I'm doing SE so hard that NI is coming up with stuff. I don't even know. Like it's really harmonious.
Yeah. Interesting.
I can keep going, but just for the sake of not going crazy here.
Yeah. It sounds like the last block to align everything. Inferior NI. Yeah. So what I was speaking to was an SE Dom is collecting all these points and then just automatically, unconsciously will turn those dots into a line and say like, okay, this is what I want to do.
And that makes your SE look super cool too. Cause it's like, wow, how does he know what to do here? It's like while he's acting in the moment, he's also got this like backup unconscious NI like supporting that.
Yeah.
So that's really cool to me.
Yeah. And so I have seen, well, I mean, like my father has done incredible things in his life. He's traveled the world and like worked in all these different countries, and I can see like that is inferior NI at work. Like there is a direction to the seeming SE chaos, right? Inferior NE. Well, this one is an interesting question. ISFJ, ICJ, inferior NE, healthy. I've seen that like after everything is stable, that they get very playful inside of their castle.
Yeah, I've seen that.
Yeah, like hey, let's try out this kind of like party,
Yeah, or like I said, putting a different spin on the food thing, like trying something new with the thing they always cook. Because like I feel so confident in my ability to make this particular dish. But if I try a little bit of that this time, I've seen like this ICJ because they eat a lot of fruit and mix with yogurt. And like I usually eat with straw. I usually eat apples. I'm gonna throw in a pear. Let's live life on the crazy side, yeah. And I'm like, there you go, and they're happy about it.
Oh, here's the other thing. My ICJ friend, very funny.
Yeah, I can't say that about mine.
Yeah. He like when he's relaxed, just like the humor comes out.
Because like aren't ICJ like isn't the stereotype like they're telling kind of like dad jokes or like very dated or just like and I think that's what makes it funny maybe that it's just like, wow, that is a really bad joke.
Yeah, but completely just out of left field.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So
there you go.
It's any inferior TI, ENFJ, ESFJ. I've seen for ESFJ like they're so focused on FE. I've seen TI be used to update their FE. Like, oh, okay, I get that kind of person also exists, and thus I can use that information, the logical information, to better accommodate for that person.
Yeah, and like you said, just generally like maybe reading books to back up what you're doing. Like if you have a career in helping people, whatever, you're reading books about don't know, anatomy, cognitive functions, like psychological things, maybe health related things, different foods. I don't know. I'm picturing like a caretaker or just someone that's doing something in that type of field. If you're an HR person, tons of stuff you can learn about business because maybe you don't need it in order to be an HR rep, but knowing where that person's coming from is FE, right? But like having the understanding their logic and how they think from the business side could be helpful, and that could be a way that they could facilitate that as well.
That's huge, yeah, and I've seen that where they're employing TI to feed to help to aid with their FE.
Okay.
And so yes, someone majors in hospitality to like really supercharge their FE. Inferior TE. I've seen this. So ISFPs. I've seen essentially ISFPs. The advice for them is to just get into action, to just SE, and then as they get into action, then everything starts to work. And I would say that what's happening there is they're collecting enough data to automatically set up the systems that make everything work, and that's just unconscious TE in action. And I've seen my mom. She does SI, and then things start to work. So
the reason why I wanted to do that is because we obviously want to point out the how should I put it, the how these can manifest themselves in a difficult way, such that it causes you to have to feel not yourself, or or feel awkward, or feel whatever. But I also wanted to show the good side because what I want to do is more often is formulate some sort of question to leave our watchers with. So I wanted to ask. So the question I want to ask as we wrap up is, if you know your cognitive function, you know your MBTI type, and whatever your inferior function is, how is that, now that you've have these examples of both sides, how is that manifesting itself in your daily life? Maybe people around you, and maybe you can reflect on that. And then, so now that you've seen the dark side and the light side of it, you can say, okay, well, I see that, there's a few things that are going, I'm doing pretty good. But, oh yeah, I do that sometimes. So that's something I can try not to, or let's think of a different way I can approach that in the future. Or, hey, maybe you're doing really good. And you're like, you know what? That's great. Because that's also, what's the word? It reinforces that identity, yourself.
You're doing fine.
Yeah, you're doing well. Now it's time to look at your shadow functions, because we're probably going to move into those. That's my plan. So we have this series ending now with the first 4 cognitive functions, and then looking at the shadow functions and how they manifest themselves. And we'll obviously look at the dark side and the bright side of that, because it is possible to positively use your lower functions. At least that's my theory.
Oh yeah.
And I think that obviously it's always going to be a struggle with those. And so there are things you can do on a daily basis to just reflect, think about how, like, maybe you did something, like, okay, how could I have done that differently? And what function was that? And okay, so it's easier to approach it next time. Because if you're like, because you can easily be like, I talked to this person today, I said something, they got upset. Well, not knowing why or how that happened, you still can figure out how to fix that. Sure, you go, oh, I said this, so therefore I shouldn't. But if you go, that was TI just logic bombing them suddenly because I was in a bad mood. And you're like, okay, well, now that I know it's TI and that's how I approached it, this person probably felt that way because this type of person, I guess, who would be offended by TI?
Well,
me and I.
I've also heard ENFP, like if you ask an ENFP to give TI, then they can't.
Well, no, I'm talking about whoever would be negatively affected by that, knowing what their functions are, will also be like, okay, so now I can, next time I'm thinking this way or feeling this way, I can formulate it a different way in order to better speak to that person. Is my goal. So the question is, so how does your inferior function manifest itself in your daily life? And evaluate that. And maybe in the comments you can talk about it and tell us what you found.
Yes. The way I see what you just shared is like the TE perspective. So I think TE people would resonate with what you just said, like how to handle this information, right? I also want to share my TI model on what unhealthy and healthy inferior function looks like, if I may. Consciously attempted inferior function, I think, is how it's unhealthy. And what I would suggest is for everyone is to try noticing when you're really trying to apply your inferior function and just let it go completely. And instead, respect that you have a hero and a parent function, and use those. Make sure that they are the first and second priority in your life. And what you may notice, and what I've noticed in my own life, is your inferior function comes out unconsciously, automatically, in order. And yes, so like when I let go of FE, I don't stop using FE. I just use FE in a natural way. That's been my observation, and that's a TI model I'd like to share with you. And that's something that you can chew on. The general idea I've come to is actually that it's very easy. It's very easy to be authentic and aligned you. However, there may be cultural, societal messages coming that can push you out of alignment, making you over rely on the inferior, or also survival instinct. Growing up in an unsafe environment can cause that too. And when you can prioritize hero and parent, everything else just works. That's been my observation. So that is my TI perspective to share.
We're going to give the other 6 functions perspective as well.
No. Well, it's just that's what I would like to share with you. And for action-oriented listeners, there is also Derek's questions about how you can apply this information in your life.
I'm just looking for community interaction, so yes. I don't see how else to portray that.
Absolutely. That is everything that I can think of to talk about here.
The inferior function. So that ends this particular set of videos. There's a playlist for that, and then we'll move on to the shadow functions one by one at some sort of pace.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's everything.
Sounds good.
All right.
See you then.
Bye.